Gosh darn it. I made graphics for Texan Live stuff, and I've already had to fix them like 4 times because the time was wrong, and now I accidentally put May instead of April because time has no meaning. So
time really has no meaning.
Gosh.
It really doesn't.
Well, that stinks, but you know what doesn't stink? We have a guest that we are so incredibly excited to have on. We mentioned it earlier. Republic of Football Network has a conglomerate of 10 different podcasts. We're trying to get all 13 FBS schools on, but we found a really good one in Fort Worth, Texas, covering those TCU Horned Frogs. Frog Insider co-host Melissa, girl, please tell me I'm saying this right. Triebwasser?
Triebwasser. You guys were so close. Trust me, it's been butchered much worse than that in the past.
We were close.
You're not.
Good. Okay.
Yeah,
well, we were close. It's Melissa Triebwasser, the co-host of Frogs Insider, a member of the ROF network, joins us. Melissa, we are so excited to have you as part of the network. Thank you for coming on WTF, but we want to get to know a little bit more about you. Everyone we bring on the show, we want to hear your backstory. How'd you get here, and when the love for the Horned Frogs start?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, I appreciate you guys having me on. So fun to connect, and could not be more excited to be a part of Republic of Football and just Dave Campbell's Texas football in general. I told Mike when we kind of signed on that the thought of this California kid having her name associated with DCTF is still a little bit unbelievable to me. So it's super, super fun opportunity. Couldn't be more proud to represent TCU on that network. So I am old. We'll put it out there, and I'm not going to give you dates of when I first came to TCU, but I will proudly say that I came to TCU from California before it was the cool thing to do, and like to consider myself a trendsetter. Yeah, and have been trying to get TCU admissions to give me a kickback ever since, and it has not happened. But yeah, my freshman season we were 1-10 at TCU. I don't even know how I got to know what TCU was back then, but found it in a Princeton review guide, decided that's where I wanted to be, had never stepped foot in the state of Texas before I visited the campus. And, here we are all those years later, bleeding purple. But I studied radio, TV, film while I was there. Our sports teams were mostly terrible. We had one good season of basketball, but I fell in love with just the culture of college athletics and college football especially. And Gary Patterson and I kind of came of age at TCU around the same time. He was just starting to get his coaching career started there. I was there when LaDainian Tomlinson was running roughshod over the Conference USA and the WAC and all of those other stops along the journey. And I just really developed a passion, not just for the sport of college football, college basketball, college baseball, but the community that kind of developed within that. And that eventually led me to start covering TCU. And I started with a really, really just bad blog. I mean, delightfully bad, but bad blog back in 2010. Joined in with SB Nation in 2014. And then went over to Frogs Today a year ago. And then now with Dave Campbell's. And I just kind of want to point out as I discuss that journey, every time I switch organizations that I cover TCU for, they have a historically great season. So I can't wait to see what 2023 brings.
I mean,
National championship.
There's literally only one way up from last season for y'all. So, all right. We got it. You heard it here first on WTF that you can all thank Melissa if those Horned Frogs bring home the Natty next year. But I got to ask, because you said, it's been a journey, and not just from your personal standpoint, but TCU, as you mentioned, from Conference USA to the WAC to everything to literally playing in the national championship this year, you have really been a part of this program in some form or fashion from the get-go. How much stinking fun was that for you after feeling the heartbeat of this team for so long to see them just play on that stage this year?
I mean, it's indescribable. And, I always have called myself a lowercase J journalist because I am always going to be a fan first. And I think that that's part of what makes covering TCU through the organizations that have been able to do so more enjoyable. Is I never want to lose my passion for covering TCU athletics. Mm-hmm. And So, I mean, there's been some really magical moments, again, 1 in 10 my freshman year to watching TCU run out into the field for the national championship game. It's still hard for me to believe that was a reality, but, there have been the highest of highs. There have been the lowest of lows. I, was sat in my bed for 8 hours on Selection Sunday in 2014 when TCU inexplicably dropped from 3 to 6. And then, a few short years later, I am literally hugging and crying with the Fiesta Bowl mascot at the end of that game when literally I was bawling. I couldn't control it. I didn't want to be, but it happened. And the Fiesta Bowl mascot comes over to me and he was like, happy tears? And I'm like, you're not supposed to talk, bro. But yeah, they're happy tears. And it was just the coolest, taking videos of myself with the confetti falling, trying to remember I have a job to do. And I was doing photography, but I mean, it's been so fun to be so tied to that university, to have been a part of that community for, again, I don't want to say the years, but a lot of them, and to watch, this journey over the last, quarter century, to see TCU go from being kind of a joke to a member of the Big 12 to a player on the national stage. And, it didn't even matter to me what happened in that national championship game. I'm a teacher and I came back the next Monday and all my students were like, oh, are you okay? Are you sad? And they were trying to make fun of me. I'm like, I don't care. No. I played for a national championship. You can't tell me nothing, man.
No.
I am good forever that. And it was so unexpected. So yeah, I mean, being on the sidelines for a Fiesta Bowl win, a national championship appearance, watching a Rose Bowl, a Peach Bowl win in between, it's been really cool to be so tightly tied to the program through that entire journey.
Well, and I can tell you from being a Michigan State fan that seeing TCU beat Michigan to go to the national championship was probably the happiest my heart has been in a very long time, because we can't get that point. So go Horned Frogs, I'll tell you that.
We made lots of friends.
Absolutely. So speaking of, covering TCU for all these years, you guys are now a part of the ROF network. You're the co-host of Frogs Insider. And I think Ashley and I were talking about this before. I think you and I are the only two females that are a part of the ROF network, which is really cool. So talk to us a little bit about that and what Frogs Insider is all about and stuff like that.
I think one of my favorite things, and Jamie Plunkett, who's my co-host, we've been doing this together now since 2014 in one way, shape, or form. And one of the coolest things for me is how many people that have come to write for us or work for us on different levels have turned this into a career, or who have continued to go on to do bigger and better things down the line. And for me, especially I don't want to say I'm a trailblazer because I'm the tiniest little fish in the tiniest little pond, but to be a female kind of trying to continue to push those boundaries and make opportunities, especially for, I work in an all girls Catholic school. I mean, make all the jokes, but yeah. But to be in that environment and to be able to show these young women that oh, you have a passion for football. Yeah, you can go talk about football, or, you want to get into sports journalism. Yeah, you can go do that. And there are so many of my former students that have gone to TCU that have gotten to be a part of that. Students that I've connected with that have started writing for me, at 16 years old and are now in-game hosts for TCU football. I think it's really important when we get a piece of that platform that we try to use it to open doors for others. And it's still really hard for women in sports, and it's really hard for women in football. And I will say the vast majority of people that I interact with, it's so positive, and I get so many compliments and kind of people always saying, y'all, for a girl, you really know your stuff, which just I hate.
It's such a backhanded compliment. I hate getting that.
It is, and I know they're trying, but
right.
But yeah, I mean, it's really cool to be the only, one of only two women on that network, but also speaks to how much work is left to be done to open those doors for other women. And just to show them that, it doesn't matter if you ever put your hand in the dirt or played the game, you can still be a knowledgeable voice about college football, professional football, and any other, sport out there that you desire to cover.
You're damn right. And that's why we had her on this show. Well,
that's what I'm saying.
Before we let you go, we do want to talk some X's and O's. Obviously, want to talk a little bit. Got two more questions for you, but the first one is Sonny Dykes. we are obviously, I think the nation is a huge fan of what Coach Dykes has done in his career, shaping up really quickly. And now, obviously, what he did in year one, we knew he was probably going to be a good fit from a scheme perspective, but he was a good fit, it seems like, just in general, from a culture perspective to everything from your time around Coach Sonny Dykes. Why do you think that he has been so successful there for the Frogs?
I mean, I think that's a great question. There were so many things, it's kind of like watching tape, like on guys that come back for a fourth season of college sports, right? And then they go through the draft process and you almost get too much evaluation. You almost have seen too much of them to be able to evaluate them fairly. And I think to some degree, that's what happened with Gary Patterson is there's a reason you don't see many coaches stay in the same place for a really long time. I mean, Michigan State fan, Tom Izzo is one of those exceptions too, right? But there are so few coaches that can have that voice in the same place for 2 decades. And that's what happened with Gary Patterson. And so Sonny Dykes came in as really the polar opposite in so many ways of the regime before him. And it was like a breath of fresh air in Fort Worth. And what Patterson did work. Like, I have zero complaints. It worked for so long. TCU is not TCU without him. And I feel like I have to caveat every conversation about Sonny Dykes with that for at least another 6, and then we can he understands the transfer portal. He's aggressive in the transfer portal. He understands NIL. He's a big put round pegs into round holes type schematic player. And so he took all of this offensive talent that existed at TCU for really the last several years. I mean, the Horned Frogs had recruited, generally the number 3 class in the Big 12 behind Texas and Oklahoma pretty consistently since 2014. And so the talent wasn't a question. He understood how to kind of exploit and unlock that talent in a way that Gary Patterson was never going to want or be willing to do offensively, with the exception of that 2014 team. And he got a little bit lucky. He didn't want Max Duggan to be his starting quarterback. Chandler Morris was his starting quarterback, and Duggan came in off the bench and became something that not many TCU fans even thought he could be. And he also just he's more of a CEO. He hired really talented guys around him and said, go do your job. And I think taking the onus off of himself to be the play caller, to have his hands into every little bit, enabled his coaches to be more impactful, not just on the practice field, but in game situations as well. So while he always knows everything that's going on, he is a manager, and he really does want to bring in great people and then let those great people be great. And you see that with the on the field product. You see that around the locker room. You see that in the coaching offices, and even like with the communications team. It is a completely different feel around TCU football, and it doesn't necessarily mean it's better or worse. It's just different in a way that TCU was ready to adopt and kind of go all in with.
Well, lastly, and you mentioned this too, how great of a recruiter that Gary Patterson was, and Sonny Dykes can follow that as well. Now, the elephant in the room is kind of that, wow, if you look at the team as a whole, how many guys you're losing to the NFL draft, like Max Duggan, Kendra Miller, Quentin Johnston. I mean, there's a ton. We kind of know what the story was from last season. Sonny Dykes being in his first year, he's taken over a squad that is just filled with talent. What is kind of the narrative or the story going into year 2 for Sonny Dykes and the TCU Horned Frogs?
I this is all that's been on my mind too over the course of spring ball is Patterson had one of his favorite sayings was, it's a lot easier to prove them wrong than it is to prove them right. Mm-hmm. And 2014 was a prove them wrong season, and 2015 was a prove them right season, and TC wasn't able to kind of fully capitalize on that. And Sonny was playing with house money last year.
Right.
TCU was picked to finish 7th for a reason. Max Duggan was an afterthought amongst Big 12 QBs, even though he was the most experienced guy coming back at the position. Everyone knew Kendra Miller was good and Quentin Johnston was good, but Quentin Johnston had, I think, like 41 career matches going. Mm-hmm. So these were not known quantities. The talent was there, the production was not. And so I think it's easy to play loose when nobody expects anything of you, but now you're back. Mm-hmm. All of the eyeballs are on you. There's so many national stories. The football offices are unlocked to ESPN and The Athletic and Dave Campbell's Texas Football and all of these big time organizations, because people want to hear your story and they want to know more about you because of how far you rose. Well, now you have to kind of do it again. Mm-hmm. And I don't think anybody expects TCU to make the national championship game again. I don't think that that's the expectation around Fort Worth. But if you're not competing for the Big 12 title, there's going to be some level of disappointment around the program. And the Frogs have capitalized on this momentum. Jeremiah Donati is so underappreciated nationally as an athletic director, and his ability to kind of strike while the iron is hot. They've done such a great job with investments. They almost fully funded the new performance facility. They've, sold more season tickets. They've sold more suites. I mean, they are raking in cash at unprecedented levels right now, and even for TCU. But at the end of the day, he's going to have to show he can do it again, and he's going to have to show he can do it with his guys. And like you said, there's so many replacements on the offensive side of the ball, and Sonny is an offensive-minded head coach. You have a new offensive coordinator. I would rather not talk about it, but it's for so many reasons, but whatever. I'm dealing with that. So he's going to have to show that he can win consistently, and that's been the bugaboo against him. He couldn't win in November at SMU. He couldn't win it all at Cal, but as a NorCal native, I can tell you nobody can win at Cal. It's not his fault. So this is his chance to say, I'm not just going to have a season that was special. I'm going to build a program that's special. And right at the turn of almost, on the precipice of Texas and Oklahoma leaving, TCU should be and can be the big time player in that conference going forward. And Sonny's going to have to show he's the guy that can make that happen.
Well, she's a big time player. Her name is Melissa
Triebwasser.
Triebwasser.
I knew that was going to happen.
I had it. Man, the whole time I was like, I'm going to get it. I'm going to do it this time. You can follow her on Twitter at @thecoachmelissa. Man, can't tell you how much we appreciate you hopping on WTF. So excited to have you as a part of the DCTF family, and I'm sure we're going to be talking to you a lot more, so thanks so much, Melissa.
I appreciate you guys having me on. I'm happy to jump on anytime, and I hope that y'all will be listening to Frogs Insider, because there's going to be a lot of excitement around TCU football this fall, and we're also covering baseball. It's having a great run. We cover basketball. We cover women's sports. We're covering beach volleyball, #1 team in the nation. We're trying to go around the horn, TCU athletics, because it is a great time to be a Horned Frog.
Heck yeah, you heard it. Listen to it.
There we go. One of the newest members of the DCTF family, Frogs Insider podcast, with co-host Melissa Triebwasser.
There you go. Thanks,
I had
Melissa.
it. I was ready.
Thanks, guys.